Hello, my name is Amit Neal, and this is my presentation about flooding, specifically from Hurricane Harvey. First, we're going to talk about the weather patterns of this flooding, and this flood was storm-related, caused by Hurricane Harvey, and it was seasonal. It was in the sort of area range for hurricanes, yet the actual category and sheer magnitude of the hurricane is very uncommon for the area where it made landfall. And this hurricane was driven by the warm water and the air in Gulf of Mexico, and you see here in this image the date and location, specifically within the date range for hurricane season. And this is right before it made landfall. You see how absolutely massive this hurricane was. Next, we're going to talk about the magnitude of the flooding. And space-wise, this flood was absolutely massive. Effects were seen from Texas all the way to Kentucky. The hurricane itself was about 200 miles wide, and 27 trillion gallons of rain were dumped over the course of the entire hurricane. And a lot of areas experienced at or above 50 inches of rainfall. And looking at the time, it was a very uncommon occurrence. This flood isn't seen very often at all, very low frequency. And it's considered to be a 500-year flood, but due to climate change and human development, it's now sort of a matter of when it's going to happen, and this sort of frequency is projected to increase. Socially and economically, this flood had a lot of negative impacts. Socially, there were at least 100 deaths, 13 million were affected and displaced. There was lots of loss of necessities like electricity, food, and clean water, and many, many homes and areas were lost. You hear people sort of trying to evacuate and get some aid. And economically wise, infrastructure was severely crippled, businesses were absolutely destroyed, transportation severely limited. Again, you see here the cars struggling to get through the water, and the overall cost was about 125 billion, which is actually second ranked for most costly storm, the first being Hurricane Katrina, which was about 165 billion. So the impacts of this flood was very, very severe. Finally, we're going to talk about how Texas reacted to this flood. But even before that, they were significantly underprepared. At most, homeowners had a 100-year flood plan, meaning that they got protection from a flood that was projected to occur once a century. Yet this specific flood is considered a 500-year flood, meaning no one was prepared and no one really expected it to happen. And this also shows that Texas has a lot of outdated models specifically for their natural disaster protection, which left a lot of homeowners vulnerable. Now, there have been a lot of rising occurrences of floods, nothing of specifically this size, but there have been some pretty large floods. And this also means that risks aren't being properly judged for that specific area. And due to this sort of inaccurate observation, there have been no significant infrastructure changes implemented to support and aid against these floods, which in my opinion seems very irresponsible. Well, thank you for listening to my Hurricane Harvey flooding presentation. These are my main sources. All my other sources were under the pictures, and that was it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.